Hello and welcome to the podcast that loves to chest it down and balloon it into rosette. It's the big man up top.
It is, yes. How are you doing, Joe?
Yes, good, thanks, Ed. I'm coming down with something, actually. I've got a bit of a croaky throat, but we'll soldier on. How are you doing?
Doing okay, thank you. Doing okay. What have you got for the throat there, Joe? Have you got a little fisherman's friend, or?
I was introduced to this tea called Glow Tea. Have you heard of that?
I've not, no. Doesn't really sound like my cup of tea.
No, sure. It's a Twinings number. They do it well. And it's a strawberry and cucumber tea.
It doesn't sound very big man up top to me.
It doesn't. Should be sipping on some warm Bovril, shouldn't
Get yourself a Bovril or just a Builder's Brew. Well, it's good to see you. We're going to be chatting all things transfer window, aren't we, Joe?
Yes, it's a big time of the season. We should mention at this point that we are recording on Sunday night, aren't we, Ed?
Yes.
Due to various work commitments.
So it's about 24 hours before the window closes. So by the time you hear this, a lot of what we're going to say is probably going to be out of date, but let's just go with it.
This is just going to be a load of pure speculation, and we'll see what happens. But before we do any of that, Ed, I think you need to apologise, don't you?
Oh, I do. So last week in Bible Ballers, in the trivia, you set me a question.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember what the question was, but it had something to do with which Premier League winning captain.
That was it, yeah.
And I was struggling to remember Premier League winning captains, particularly obviously that had the first name that's shared with the book of the Bible. And I ended up guessing Tim Cahill. Listening back to the episode, I cannot believe I guessed Tim Cahill, who I absolutely know is not a Premier League winning captain. I don't know where the guess came from.
I don't think he was even a captain, Ed.
He was at Everton, wasn't he?
I thought it was Arteta.
I don't know. Look, I'm disappointed generally in my performance in the quiz, but that was a low. And so I'd like to apologise to the fans for all those people that have, made the effort to travel hundreds of miles or whatever to hear the quiz this week. I'm sorry, you will be refunded.
You'll be given a refund.
Yeah, exactly. I am hanging my head in shame, proverbially.
As you should.
But it's time to challenge you this week, isn't it, Joe?
Okay, and I'll try not to make a fool of myself like you did.
Yeah, try not to. So this is Bible Ballers. It's Guess the Player with a Difference. The player will share his first name with the name of a book in the Bible. And this is very much in the theme of me trying to make this difficult for you, Joe. Because,
okay, I see.
Because, you are much better at this than me. So, are you ready?
Yeah, go on then.
Which French former midfielder who played nearly 250 times for Arsenal and also played in Italy, has now dedicated his life to developing alternatives to fossil fuels by founding his own biochemical company?
The first thing that came to mind, and I wouldn't put it past you doing this, is Emmanuel Petit. Now, obviously, there isn't a book of the Bible called Emmanuel, but you could say that Emmanuel is all throughout the Bible.
Exactly, yeah.
And I wouldn't put it past you to do that. French midfielder for Arsenal, Samir Nasri. Is that French for Samuel? Did he play in Italy? Oh.
Have a think about it, Joe, and we'll come back to it at the end of the show.
Well, Ed, speaking of quizzes, we did a Christmas quiz episode, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We were joined by producer Anthony and the lovely Joel Brown, and also the fantastic Sarah Hine from UCB1.
Yes, now Sarah Hine is a Manchester City fan, though she refuses to come on the podcast to talk about that. But this week, Ed, she received some mail following that episode.
Now, listen, I'm not going to say I'm upset that the first person associated with this podcast to receive physical mail was neither of us.
Feels a bit unfair, doesn't it? I think we're 25 episodes in now, and yeah, we've not received a thing.
We need to get the address, don't we? We'll put the address in the show notes from now on.
It feels risky to do
does,
that.
But feel free to send us your physical mail. We want your letters. What did Sarah get, Joe, in the post?
Well, Sarah received a lovely, clean Manchester City mug.
She needs a new mug, to be fair.
Well, she does, actually. I've obviously made the classic jokes all the way through this week of, oh, you need to clean your mug. There's a bit of dirt on it. You know, the classics. I am quite close to taking the mug hostage, having my way with it, putting some Liverpool badges over it. But I'm a little bit scared of Sarah, I won't lie, Ed.
Yeah, no, she won't react well to any of that nonsense.
She wouldn't, no.
But no, a heartfelt thanks from that big man up top listener who sent that to Sarah. She's very grateful, as are we, for your support. Should we do a roundup of the Premier League, Joe?
Shall we talk about a red team absolutely battering a blue team, Ed?
Who are you thinking, Joe?
I'm thinking Nottingham Forest against Brighton.
Very good,
actually.
Yes, very good.
Obviously, friend of the podcast, Chris Wood. Can we call him a friend of the podcast? Because I've met him once. I feel like I can.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to get him on. He's now my number one target to get on the podcast, so we'll definitely get him on there. But yeah, big hat-trick for Chris Wood.
He's having an incredible season. 22 goals now. Who'd have thought that? And he's just signed a new contract as well. Extension at Nottingham Forest. And what a way to celebrate that with this hat-trick. And Forest were just sensational in this game.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be ruthless to win 7-0, don't you? But it's very much been the way they've been playing. Particularly, I thought in this game, Langer was just outstanding. So was Gibbs-White, just really, really creative. And obviously, Chris Wood's just sort of there to get the finishes, and he does his job as well. But everything is just functioning really well at Forest. And, you know, Brighton are no mugs. They've been playing really well, a really good side. And yeah, they were off their game a bit, but 7-0, that's something else, isn't it?
Yeah, Brighton have had some big wins this season. They've beaten Man City, they've beaten United, but it just didn't seem like they had a game plan against Forest. And you're right, Forest were ruthless in this game. It looked like every time they go forward that they were going to score. And Brighton didn't seem to adapt their game at all. Take nothing away from Forest, they were brilliant in this game. And I think you have to start taking them seriously, I think. I know we are, but they were level on points with Arsenal before today, and I think they're serious contenders, definitely for top four.
Absolutely, and I think that's the question now. Is for Forest fans, what would be a successful season from here on in? From this point, you have to say anything outside of the top four, and they'd be disappointed with. It would represent 100%. A real drop-off.
And I think what's really important, and I'm surprised we've not seen this, is that Forest don't seem to have made any big signings this transfer window. And I wonder if now's the time to do that, because, let's be honest, Forest's stock isn't going to be this high for a while, I don't think. And now's the time that you should be trying to attract players to get this longevity. Let's be honest, Chris Wood isn't going to post these numbers next season or
do you not think?
I don't think so.
Don't say things like that, Joe. We're trying to get him on the podcast.
Sorry. Yeah, Chris Wood's got another 5 years in him at this level, and he deserves top quality players around him.
Exactly.
I just feel like now's the time to make the most of being a big club.
It is also a terrible time of the season to buy, isn't it, in terms of the price of players. So maybe the sensible way of looking at it is, you know what, they're playing very well. They seem to have enough cover at the moment. When the odd players have dropped out, they're still looking very good. If I was a Forest fan, I'd be thinking, let's buy well. Let's maybe buy one or two key players, you know, where they're needed or whatever. But yeah, exciting times at the City Ground.
It is, absolutely. Let's move on to another big win. Today, Arsenal beat Man City 5-1.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Just when we think City have turned things around, they put in a performance that just brings them right back to where they were. Defensively, they just looked all over the place again, didn't they?
And straight from the off as well. John Stones gave the ball away in what can only be described as a hospital pass to Akanji. Got intercepted by Kai Havertz, who laid it off to Ødegaard. And within 2 minutes, they were 1-0 up and just looked very comfortable. Man City, particularly in that first half, they just didn't have a midfield. And, you know, we've spoken about Rodri, his impact on the squad. But this was sensational, how they just had no control of this game at all. And it's quite concerning if you're a City fan.
And I think, like, especially looking at that whole sort of playing things out from the back, this is the same thing we talked about with Southampton. is at a certain point you have to go, is this costing us points? And like today, their lack of ability of being able to pivot on their game plan, which is usually what Pep is so good at doing, really, really cost them. Arsenal, we have to say, looked really good. They're continuing to get into the swing of things, and this is a good time of the year for them to really hit that form as well, because if Liverpool do drop off, Arsenal will be right on the tail.
Yeah, and they need to be right there for if Liverpool do slip up at any point. But Arsenal look like the Arsenal we've seen the last couple of seasons now. I think they're sharing goals around. There's still chat of wanting a striker in, but when they're at their best, they share goals around their midfield, their wingers, and they just look really good. A big part of this was how bad City were. And look, we know City are a great team. They've got so much quality. They can score a goal. But there was something really striking about the mentality in this game, I think. I think they got that equaliser through Haaland, and you thought a good Man City side will get another one quite quickly. But they conceded within 2 minutes of that, and from there they just looked completely out of the game.
Everton got a huge win at home to Leicester 4-0. And I know it's Leicester, they've been struggling, but Everton with this sort of resurgence again under Moyes, the good times are coming back to Goodison, aren't they, Joe?
Yeah, and they're scoring goals. They've scored 8 goals under Moyes since he rejoined, and under Dice they scored 16 goals up until Moyes joined, so he's already halfway there. Beto looked like a completely different player up front. You know, he went through on goal for his second goal, and it just didn't look like he was going to miss, whereas a couple of months ago, you'd bet your house on him missing. And it's quite unbelievable the turnaround they've had. And they look so solid at the back as well, which you cannot say of Everton recently.
Getting them comfortably away from the relegation zone is obviously the mission this year. And maybe, who knows, next year Everton will be the Nottingham Forest of the Premier League. Another fantastic win, I think, is Wolves, who beat Villa 2-0 yesterday. Now, Villa have been a little bit inconsistent of late, but a massive win for Wolves in this one.
Yeah, huge. And you could tell that this one meant a lot to their fans and their players. Cunha scored the second goal, and he did the whole like kissing the badge thing, pointed at the pitch to say, "I'm staying." And he even mimicked signing a new contract, to which he's done straight after the game, which I loved. But yeah, this was a great win for Wolves. Villa, I don't know if you saw the goal they got disallowed, and I don't want to get into criticising referees and that kind of thing, but it's a strange decision. I don't know if you've seen this goal that would have equalised it for Villa, but basically what happened, they had a free kick, and we know Aston Villa love their free kick. They've got Austin McPhee.
Oh, we love him.
We love Austin McPhee. It was a well-rehearsed free kick. You know, it was one of those ones where they faked to cross it. They played it down the side and played it across, and it was ruled offside. And Marland scored but wasn't offside, but Morgan Rogers was ruled offside for running, almost like blocking a run from an offside position, but he didn't touch the man at all. So I think it's quite a questionable decision, but take nothing away from Wolves. I think this was a fantastic win. Villa keep up this trend of struggling after Champions League games as well. I think they're really struggling with the workload of having that. So, yeah, strange season for Villa.
Strange season indeed. We've had a whole load of away wins over this weekend. Let's start with your club, Liverpool. 2-0 away win at Bournemouth. What did you make of this one, Joe?
It was just one of those professional wins. You know, Bournemouth are very good. They're the informed team. Arsenal have lost there, City have lost there this season, and you see this fixture and you think, oh, this could be difficult, particularly off the back of what they did to Forest last week as well. So I wasn't confident on this one, but actually it was just a professional performance, defensively really solid. Alisson was back to his best, I think, in this game. He's not looked great coming back from injury, but he had a really good game. And I think just a job well done, Ed. You're looking at me like you disagree.
I'm going to disagree. I thought Liverpool were below par. I mean, it's always good to get those wins. And I think you're right, professional, sometimes you have to get the win. I thought the penalty was very dodgy, personally.
One of those that it depends what angle you're looking at, which
Yeah,
I think my perspective on it is, if you see the angle from behind, you quite clearly see that Lewis Cook, there's contact there with Gakpo's leg that then trips up Gakpo's other leg. And I think that's quite clear contact. But at the same time...
Soft. Can we call it soft?
No, we can. I think, how's the referee seeing that in real time?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because it is the slightest touch. And it's one of those in the category of ref gives it on the field, VAR aren't going to overturn it because there is contact. Whereas if it's the other way around, he's not overruling it because the contact's so minimal. So it's just one of those, it's very soft. But I do think it's a foul. And
I'm going to keep going. Could have had a penalty against Trent for handball.
Yeah.
Again, it would have been.
It's more shoulder.
Do you? Okay. Well, I think McAllister was a lucky boy as well. That was my other thing.
I do agree with that.
He got a booking which was very soft, a very soft booking, but he's been very, very lucky to escape a second. Yeah.
I think it's always a sign of luck when the manager pulls you off straight away.
Yes.
After that second challenge, you think, oh. Yeah, he should be off for that.
There was a big miss for Kluivert as well. On another day, those things could have gone wrong. All of this happened at 1-0. And Bournemouth actually, despite losing 2-0, actually played really, really well in this game. So I think on another day, Liverpool could have come a cropper. But they didn't, and that's what you've got to do. You've got
to ride your luck.
You've got to ride your luck.
You're going to get decisions for you. You're going to get decisions against you. Look, I don't mind these soft penalties. We're still dining out on the Luis Diaz goal from last season at Spurs.
Yeah, exactly.
So we deserve it, Ed.
Well, we'll see. Crystal Palace with a big win away at Man United, 2-0, Joe.
Was this a shock?
Well, this is it. The way that United are playing these days, probably not.
I was watching because this game wasn't televised, I was watching the Brentford Spurs game, and it comes up with the goal updates, and it said there's been a goal at Old Trafford, and I fully expected this to be a Palace goal both times. I think that just shows the state of United is one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah, but Palace looking particularly solid. They've got that back three of Lacroix and Gahey. Oliver Glasner looking like an old dear from a church group in his post-match interview with the sort of the jumper he had, the knitted jumper he had on.
He looks like he makes a very strong squash.
Yes, absolutely. But fair play, Crystal Palace. Always good to get an away win, whether it's at Old Trafford or not. You mentioned the Spurs-Brentford one. Again, another 2-0. And a really solid win for Spurs, and we've not given them a great deal of credit in previous weeks. So, I feel like we should mention that.
Yeah, and a weirdly solid performance at the back. The word for this win was pragmatic, which you don't associate with Spurs this season. Really good performance from them, actually. And Brentford didn't offer loads going forward. But yeah, Ange didn't smile. Don't expect him to smile.
No, but we'll keep an eye on him. Great away win for Southampton, winning away 2-1 at Ipswich, and equally Fulham winning away at Newcastle. All the Premier League results were really, really fascinating today. We're going to have a look at the Championship, Joe, very briefly.
Yeah, please.
I suppose the big one was the other 7-0, which was Leeds 7, Cardiff City 0. Whatever Nottingham Forest can do, Leeds United can, I was going to say do better, but no, just equal, I suppose. Leeds looking superb again, and sort of really getting into their stride, looking like that team that we were expecting them to be, being ruthless. I think Daniel Farke said something about needing to be relentless in this league, and that's very much the display. They just looked like they were going to score every time they got the ball, and you can't see anything other than a really emphatic return to the Premier League for Leeds. Also want to pick up an amazing win for bottom of the table Plymouth, who were at home to West Brom and found themselves 1-0 down with 15 minutes to go, and yet somehow pulled out a 2-1 win at home. And that's the kind of result that Plymouth are going to need at this stage of the season. When you're down there at the bottom of the table, you sort of need a miracle, but the thing you need is the fans behind you, and to show the kind of gutsy performance that they did will be massive for them.
Absolutely, and the Championship this season looks really tight. There's 5 points separating the bottom five, and at the top as well, it looks tight. So it's going to be a really interesting run-in.
This is the phase where they always talk in the Championship, don't they, about putting a run together. Coventry are a prime example of that. 4 wins on the bounce for Frank Lampard's team. And it's at this point that you go, oh, well, actually, like, they're now 3 points off the playoffs. You do put those runs together and it really changes your season. But speaking of Plymouth, Joe, I don't know if you saw on social media, there was this absolutely incredible clip of a guy who was doing a crossbar challenge at half-time at Home Park.
No.
He has an attempt and misses, but gets quite close. And then he has another go and manages to ping it off the crossbar. There's a big cheer from the fans. And this guy basically does, I think, what all of us really would like to do. And instead of just sort of cheering or whatever, he does a full-blown celebration, running up to the home fans, giving it the oi, oi, giving it the large, and then finishing with a massive knee slide into the home end behind the goal.
That's so good.
It's just exactly what we all wish we could do. I absolutely loved that.
Yeah. Quite a strange week for Watford as well, Ed. I don't know if you followed this.
Oh, no. Tell me about that.
But they're sitting mid-table. They've got Tom Cleverley in charge, former Manchester United 5-yard passer. He's been under a bit of pressure. There's been rumours that Watford have been in talks with other managers, as they so often are. You know, the Watford merry-go-round. It's about time they employ another lesser-known Spanish manager from the second division. But Watford wanted to come out, and they did, the dreaded vote of confidence.
Yeah.
For Tom Cleverley, but they came out with this statement: Watford FC confirms Tom will be in charge for the match at Coventry City, and that the speculation over his position is just that, pure speculation. I thought that was quite a strange wording for an official statement.
Yeah, why are they even acknowledging it? It's either nonsense or it's not. And I think that, like, a football club should just not be acknowledging that kind of nonsense.
Absolutely. It feels very much like a club looking at what people are saying on Twitter, panicking a little bit and trying to quash the rumours. But it doesn't feel very professional to me, Ed. I don't know. But we'll see.
We'll see, yeah. A couple of things I just wanted to point out in League One, actually. The usual teams picking up wins. Birmingham, Wrexham got a late win. Stockport are now 4 on the bounce as well, which is looking fantastic for them. But I really wanted to pick out this result. Shrewsbury beating Mansfield. Now, Shrewsbury were bottom of League One on Saturday, and they found themselves going 1-0 down within 5 minutes against Mansfield, which, you can just imagine
it's not
the
ideal.
fans. No, oh, here we go again. Within half an hour, they'd had a player sent off. This is not looking like a good day at all. But they came out fighting in the second half and managed, despite being a goal down and a man down, to win 2-1, which is absolutely huge. So, let's see how Shrewsbury get on. But again, kind of like Plymouth, that's the sort of spirit you need. That's the sort of strength of character that you need to get yourself off the bottom of the table. And that's exactly what they did. Now, this episode will drop just as the transfer window slams shut, Joe, as it does. It doesn't close gently, does it? Like those sort of, those annoying sash windows that you can never close
really
those gently.
Really tricky.
Yeah. So
I don't know if the January window slams shut.
Oh,
I think
it
the summer
definitely
one does.
Anyway, regardless of how it shuts, we thought we'd just sort of have a bit of time looking at the transfers and like what have been the big moves, Joe. And all of this, like we said at the start of the show, is on the understanding that the window hasn't closed yet as of us recording this. Yeah. So this may not be
accurate.
No. What have been the big moves that have been on the table?
I think the big talking point of this week is John Duran. Now, he's had a great start to the season. He scored 12 goals for Aston Villa. A very promising 21-year-old. Labelled as a bit of a super sub, hasn't he?
And there's been a lot of chat, hasn't there, with John Duran about him maybe being unhappy at being a super sub as well.
Yeah, I think he's a bit of a character. There's been a lot of chat about his attitude. He was subject to a bid of £40 million from West Ham in the summer, which he rejected the offer to West Ham. He then went away with Villa to West Ham. He scored He pumped his badge and he pointed down at the pitch as if to say, I'm staying here. But he was pointing at the West Ham pitch.
Yeah.
He just rejected the bid.
I'm staying here, but not here. No, actually in Birmingham, about 80 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, he's now completed a move to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia to play alongside your friend of mine, Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, I don't know what you think of it, Joe, but it sort of bothers me a bit. This is a really exciting talent, clearly good enough to play in the Premier League, and clearly his stock is only going to go up, his talent is only going to go up. Like, why is he making this move to the Saudi League?
It seems a really strange move, and I think you're right. I think it's quite sad, actually. I personally look forward to watching him play. I think he's really exciting. You see him come on and you think something's going to happen. And, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, the money's a big thing. He's 21 years old. Maybe in his head he's like, I'll do a few years in Saudi, I'll set myself up well, and then I'll come back. But it's just going to be interesting to see the reception in a few years' time, because I don't think the Saudi League's a high level compared to Europe at all.
No.
And it'll be interesting to see what standard he's at. I think you look at a player like Ivan Toney, yes, there's different age profiles there, but we've heard nothing from him at all. He's not in the conversation for any England national team squads. Obviously, John Duran is Colombian, so it's different. But I think Ivan Toney's very much fallen off the face of the footballing conversation. And I worry that's going to happen here as well.
And you don't hear many stories of players at the top of their game, like Ivan Toney or John Duran, going to a league like Saudi, but also when the Chinese league was up and running, same thing applied there. You don't hear of many players going to those leagues and going, you know what, this was the best move for my career.
Even Aymeric Laporte, he moved last season, and within a month he came out and said, the traffic's terrible. So he moved.
Yeah.
He moved house. So hopefully John Duran doesn't mind traffic, because it's not ideal. Maybe there's a bit of this, and this is me maybe giving a bit of grace, I don't know, but he's grown up watching Cristiano Ronaldo play football. Here is an opportunity to go and play alongside him for a couple of years. Maybe that excites him. I don't know.
Maybe.
But it seems a strange move. I think he could have got a move to a big European club. I think Arsenal would be a great fit for him. But, yeah, that's what happens, Ed.
Speaking of wasted talent, the big news this evening is about Marcus Rashford possibly going to Villa. It seems pretty signed, sealed and delivered.
Yeah, now, so he had his medical on Sunday. And, yeah, it seems pretty certain to happen. Now, this could either be an absolute masterstroke or an absolute catastrophe, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I think that, like, you look at it, and Rashford needs a place where he's loved. He needs games. He is quite clearly a generational talent, but something is going wrong. Something is not quite right. And it has been a real shame to see the way that he's floundered under the last couple of managers at United. So who knows? Maybe this could be the making of him.
It could be. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Emery uses him. I think it's quite clear that his best position is off the left. I think you think back to his first season under Ten Hag, that's where he played. That's where he went on that extraordinary run of scoring goals, looking like one of the best wingers in Europe. A few managers have played him up top, and it's not really worked. I do think Villa will play him on the wing. I think they should play him on the wing. But he's a similar player to Morgan Rogers, and what's that going to do in that system? I don't know.
We'll see how that goes. Are there any other moves we should be keeping an eye on, Joe?
Yeah, so speaking of Villa, they're doing a few moves, Ed, as we approach transfer deadline day. They're in talks with Marco Asensio of PSG. One of these players that he came through the Real Madrid system, and it's a very promising winger, but's never really done it at the top level. He's one of those that has sparks of brilliance, but not that consistent. So it'll be interesting to see him in the Premier League. At the same time, they've been in chats with João Felix to bring him from Chelsea, which I think is another really interesting move. Again, don't know where he fits in the system. Think he's a really exciting player. Again, hasn't really made an impact at Chelsea. I think there's some reluctance from Chelsea to sell to a Champions League rival. But yeah, we'll see. There's a few rumours.
Very much a part of the sort of landscape of the transfer window is the rumour mill. It's the gossip columns. I imagine you've had to read a few of them to even just get up to date with what's going on and who's going where. Like, do we think these are a helpful part of the game? You know, I don't want to sort of be that Christian guy and just be like, well, gossip, I'm not entirely sure we should be, because I don't think that's really what it is. But is any of this helpful?
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, and you're right. We were chatting about this episode and thought the obvious route one thing to do here would be we don't do gossip. And I don't think that's relevant because this is a different type of gossip. I think gossip columns are something that we all grew up with. It was page 316. Was it 316 on Teletext?
Oh,
or was
yes.
that Live Scores?
I remember it well.
I do wonder how much attention players do pay to this kind of thing. I think Twitter, social media is awash with this kind of thing, and more people are claiming to be an expert, claiming to have had conversations with agents, with clubs, and there's so much chat out there about this that I do think it could be quite unsettling. I think from both sides, I think it could be quite distracting for a player. I think you can definitely tell on a pitch when a player is at the centre of this kind of thing. And it affects performance. I'd imagine it affects them mentally as well. And it's also unsettling for a dressing room, I think. If one of your star players is linked to a move, I think it could really be quite unsettling for the team.
We've talked before about how it's really easy to forget that football players are humans. But these are big life decisions, aren't they? And I suppose it is just the nature of the game that players transfer clubs, and obviously since one player transferred to one club hundreds of years ago, that club then needed to buy somebody else. And so often these transfers do happen quite quickly, and you can find yourself happily at one club 1 minute and then moving on the next. But I think that it is so easy to forget that these players are human, and actually, like, these are huge things. Can you imagine, Joe, in your day-to-day life, if all of a sudden the papers were full of rumours that another Christian radio station was looking to, offer you a bit more money and tempt you away from you? That would be horrible, wouldn't it?
It would be, I think it'd be quite distressing. Obviously, I'd be in touch with Fabrizio Romano to try and get me a higher wage, to plant some stories in the papers. But you're right, it's easy to forget that these players are human. It's also easy to forget that these players have families, and often quite young families. They might have children as well. I don't know if you watched this documentary that came out a couple of seasons ago on Amazon Prime. It basically followed 4 current Premier League players. One of them was Riyad Mahrez. This was before his move to Saudi Arabia, and they did a piece around this. Riyad Mahrez got a call that he was subject of a bid to Saudi Arabia, and he wanted to accept it. And there was a conversation between him and his girlfriend about that, and she was absolutely devastated. They met in Manchester. She had friends in Manchester. She has family in Manchester. She was absolutely gutted at the thought of them both moving to Saudi Arabia, probably because of the traffic, Ed.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
But she was breaking down, talking to him. His response was, well, it's just part of the game. This is what happens. And I think that's a really interesting insight into what these decisions are like, because you're right, we think of this as player wants to play for a big club, player accepts move, player gets a higher wage, and that's it. But actually, this is uprooting your life, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think just on that, and to bring the Bible into this, there is a verse in Exodus that says, you shall not spread a false report. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. You must not pass along false rumours. Now, again, this is different to the transfer rumours, I think. But one thing I would say is it is a known tactic of football agents and clubs to put rumours into the rumour mill that they know are not true. Such and such a club are sniffing around this player to maybe get either a club to give them a new contract or to prompt a would-be bidder to actually put a bid in. So, we sort of joked about that at the start. I think we can all agree that sort of stuff doesn't feel right, does it?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it is very relevant. Like, the words we say are very powerful and they can be divisive, and we have to be very careful when speaking about others that we don't slip into that, particularly if it is for personal gain. I think it's quite a dangerous thing the rumour.
I think that there is definitely a difference between us going, oh, this striker might move and he might want to move here, and just acknowledging that. And there's a difference between that and the football industry, where there is these false stories that are planted for a reason. Another thing that we've chatted about in the past, Joe, has been this idea of uncertainty. And you mentioned earlier about players making these big life decisions. What are your thoughts on sort of how the Christian faith could sort of impact that side of things, for somebody who might be not sure where they're going and the next step in their life or career?
I think it's something we all experience, whether that is our next career move, whether that is with relationships, friendships, where we live. There's a lot of things that we can be uncertain about, and that can create quite a lot of anxiety. And the Bible says in Proverbs 3, verse 5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. We have this knowledge that, yes, these are big life decisions, but we're not doing this on our own. We're taught to seek wisdom from God and from those around us, actually, of when we're making big life decisions. Let's speak to God about this. Let's pray about it. Let's ask him for direction. But at the same time, God has put people in our lives that are accountable to us, have journeyed things with us, and are there to almost sound out big decisions in our life. I finished university a few years ago, and a lot of my friends have moved away, and they've spoken with me about, do you think this is a good move, whatever. And it's really helpful to do that with other people walking in a Christian faith and pray about it with them as well.
And I think actually a really good place to start, if we're talking about footballers particularly, is I'd encourage our listeners to go right back to episode 2 to hear the chat with John Bostock, who spoke a lot about how his move to Solihull Moors was very much a prayer decision. There were other options on the table, and he realised he's at the stage of his career where he needed to follow God's heart and God's plan for his life, not just where the money was or where the fame was or where the minutes on the pitch were. So yeah, definitely go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already. Okay, Joe, we're back to the trivia. Bible Ballers, how are you feeling about this one?
Ed, I have absolutely no idea. I'm not going to lie to you.
Do you think I've stitched you up?
I think you've been looking at your foreign Bibles again.
Well, I'll read the question out again. Which French former midfielder who played nearly 250 times for Arsenal and also played in Italy has now dedicated his life to developing alternatives to fossil fuels by founding his own biochemical company? So what do you think? What are you thinking?
So before I mentioned Samir Nasri, I'm wondering if you've gone Samir as a descendant of Samuel. But did he play in Italy? He definitely played in France. He definitely played for Arsenal and City. Would you have said Arsenal and City?
So you're going down the Samir Nasri route?
I am, but I don't think he's played in Italy. I think he played for Marseille, he played for Arsenal, City, and Sevilla.
Who are you going to go for, Joe?
I'm going to have to go Samir Nasri, because I think you've been a sneaky boy, and I think you've been into your French Bibles. I'm going to have to lock in a wrong answer of Samir Nasri.
Look, we've all done that. Samir Nasri is incorrect. Yeah. But a good guess, though, I think. I think that's a fairly good guess. The correct answer was Mathieu Flamini.
Oh, come on.
He played 250 times for Arsenal.
You need to stop doing this.
He played 3 times for the French national team and played for AC Milan as well. And yes, he's a big scientist, Joe. And interestingly, random fact about this biochemical company is that one big helping hand when the company was founded was by fellow Arsenal player Santi Cazorla, who was also involved in this green energy company. So there you go, Mathieu Flamini.
Well, thank you for listening to the Big Man Up Top. Ed, I'm having to pick my confidence up from the floor after that.
You'll be fine.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but if I sound dejected, then you know exactly why. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcast@ucb.co.uk. Follow, subscribe, give us good reviews. This will help us get the word out. Also, if you've enjoyed this, please tell your mates. A huge thank you to our producer Anthony Salamat-Webb for all his hard work behind the scenes. There will be a new episode next Tuesday.
There will. I'm sure you won't take it out on me in the quiz as retribution.
I guess we'll see, won't we?
Yeah. You'll be finding some name from the Ghanaian Bible.
Yeah, Galatians.
Well, thanks very much, Joe. See you next week.
See you next week, Ed.